Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Larry J. Walker, a professor at University of Central Florida. It's had a great conversation. And please tune in and support the podcast, Ed Up Accelerated Excellence, with a great host, great topics, and great people. Tune in.
This episode was recorded live at the National School Leaders Conference 2026, powered by the National Association of Elementary School Principals. Welcome to Ed Up Accelerated Excellence, a podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And I'm your host, Jacob Fusey II, PhD, PMT. We're recording live from the National School Leaders Conference hosted by the National Association of Elementary School Principals here in Orlando, Florida. And our guest is Eric Scheninger.
Very good, Jacob.
I got it right?
Yes, you did.
Perfect on first try. And Eric is the founder and CEO, a fellow entrepreneur of Aspire Change. Eric, welcome to the show. And would you please introduce yourself to the Ed Up Accelerator Excellence audience by giving voice to your name and tell us a bit about the work of Aspire Change.
Yeah, I'm a former science teacher and principal from the state of New Jersey. I should never have gone to education because my mom was an elementary teacher, my dad was an elementary principal, my grandmother was an elementary teacher. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But then I got a degree in marine biology, and I said to my parents, what am I going to do with this? And I actually went back, become a teacher, and because of an experience where I was a graduate teaching assistant when I was studying fisheries biology in Esther, Maryland. Found my calling, and the irony is my first teaching job was teaching marine biology.
Ah, there you go.
So went from teaching to administration, and my school up in Bergen County, New Jersey, in the northeast corner, my teachers did amazing things. We improved achievement. We became a catalyst for innovation. People were visiting from all over the world to see what we were doing with our practice. And organizations came, offered me a job. I said no, offered me again, no. Then I made an offer I couldn't refuse. And since 2014, I have been working with schools, organizations all over the world on how do we fundamentally improve teaching, learning, and leadership. And that's the basis of my company, Aspire Change EDU.
So, Aspire Change EDU. Before I do that, I want to get back and I want to say kudos to you because I see that you were an award-winning principal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, any award when you're a leader is a testament to the people you're surrounded by. And, leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's taking them where they need to be. And my job as a leader was to clear the runway for my people, to help them not do more work, but do the right work. And I won awards, but it was because my teachers improved achievement. My teachers implemented bring your own device. First school in New Jersey to do so 17 years ago while improving achievement. My teachers were the ones implementing personalized learning with efficacy, where we were using data to group, to regroup, target instruction. My teachers are the ones that were able to be focused on the news, CBS Channel 2, 14 times in 5 years for their innovative practice. So, awards, it's great, but I'd be remiss if I did not say that, one thing that separated us from a lot of others is we were able to show efficacy in our work, from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint. And the award might be attached to me as a single person, but it really is the result of all the amazing growth-centric practices of my staff.
Now, that is true, but I also think about this idea of winners being modest. Your role and your position and your support is also influential in allowing teachers to be able to be innovators. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, and I think that the key aspect of a leader is to show value. I'm not a fan of the term value. We shouldn't have to sell a better way to do things. How to create conditions where people want to embrace change, not because they have to, but because they want to. And I feel that was something that I really focused on is, no one likes to be told what to do. Jacob, you don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to be told what to do. And, when we think about leadership, it's, how do we empower our people to want to change? Leaders don't change people. They don't. They create the conditions where people want to change.
I agree with you on that. So tell us about the founding of Aspire. And can I just say Aspire during the whole type?
No, that's fine. Okay, say Aspire. I was when I left my principalship, which was the hardest thing I ever did. I went to the private sector and worked for two very, very large companies. Same position, 9 years, acquisitions, two different companies. But then in 2023, I think people would be shocked that I'm a little risk adverse, even though they think that I'm all for taking risks. But in 2023, everything aligned where, hey, I'm going to take the big leap of faith. And I think sometimes we all lack confidence, and whereas we should not. But when I formed the company, it really was about, okay, how do we not implement one-size-fits-all professional learning to support leaders and their teams? How do we truly listen to then create a roadmap based on what they already have in place? And that's what I really want to do. I really want to spread my wings and be able to truly, whether we use tailor, personalize, differentiate, whatever we want to call it. But how do we create the means to support educators where it's not another thing? It's, hey, let's focus on the small shifts of practice that we can do consistently to really grow our practice. And that was the real emphasis of Aspire, was being able to be a facilitator. I don't see myself as an expert. And I feel leaders shouldn't see anyone as experts, because we're not the ones in the schools doing the work. They're the experts. I'm a facilitator, and Aspire really lets me to facilitate, ask the right questions, and help people drive change that is meaningful for them.
And so your clients are primarily school principals?
No, my clients are everybody, whether it's organizations, school district leaders, building leaders, but also I just got off the phone with a district in New Jersey. We're going to be working with 400 high school teachers. So it really is thinking about, okay, how can I support? My wheelhouse is leaders, but as a former teacher, I go in and teach, model. But yeah, I really say that leaders are my focus, but we're all educators.
I agree with you. So I'm going to underscore a word: Aspire, change, eating, change. So tell us about a project that you're currently working on, or one that really, when you think about it, it confirms that you're doing what that your passion for this project really is headed in the right way.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think the hardest element of any organization, big, small, is how do you show a return on investment, or in my case, return on learning? What are the quantitative metrics to validate that the time, the effort, the finances have paid off? And I'm proud to say that, one of my projects, the school has grown 20% in 2 years on their standardized test scores. And while the quantitative is awesome, the reason that K-8 school has grown is because of the collective efforts of the principal and her team. I've done 8 coaching cycles with that school, and actually all the schools in the district. But what separates that school from the other ones in the district is the principal has followed up on virtually all the feedback. The principal and her staff are really embracing, hey, here's where our achievement is. Here are strategies that we can implement. When I walk through the school now, teachers are like, Eric, can you come in and see this? The principal is texting me all the time, showing me the qualitative evidence of what they are doing. There's such a sense of pride. And the key tenet is I don't tell people what to do. I might show them and lead them the way, but because they see that value, and yeah, the results are great. They have grown more than the other 15 schools in the district. But that's one thing I always say is when you look at a consultancy or any of the big players out there, people should ask, well, when you look at your experience, people have Googled me and they've said, wow, Eric, you really did improve achievement. I go, yeah, doesn't that what every person that does what I do should do? But now being able to turn that into, my next project is to turn that into a real case study to kind of show. So I think it's a great question. And I just think that there's so many successes happening in the world. I'm just very, very proud that I was able to play my little part in that one.
So you, in some ways, began to answer a question that I had as a follow-up. So if I am a school leader or a district leader and I am considering your services, what's the prep work I should do, or what questions should I be asking you in order to level up a partnership?
The biggest question is, can you share evidence of how your work changes practice?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I take a lot of pride in when I go in and do a coaching cycle. The leader will get a report within 24 hours that is typically between 2,000 and 5,000 words.
Mm.
And the report is generated by visiting classrooms, listening to them, looking at their action plans, but then collecting evidence or, in some cases, lack thereof. And through questioning techniques, the leaders kind of populate where they want to go. Again, as a facilitator coming in, my job is to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, well, how do you know students learned? Where was the level of thinking? How was data or evidence used to differentiate, personalize? What did students think of the lesson? And then through those reports, we then create a evidence tracker from each coaching cycle. And the report then is a call to action for the principal and their team to develop specific goals. And as they're working before the next coaching cycle, they're aligning the qualitative evidence. Here's how we're starting to introduce rotations where adaptive tool data is being used to group, regroup. Here's how we move to a tier 3 strategy in a regular ed classroom. Here is how we're scaffolding our questions: easy, moderate, challenge, or mild, medium, spicy, so that we're providing that appropriate level of difficulty for our students. So I think people should ask, show us what it looks like, show us the evidence. When I just had my call earlier today, I was showing the district that is, I think, going to book me all of the changes of practice through qualitative examples. I showed them pictures, I showed them videos. So I think leaders need to get that sense of, hey, if we're going to invest in you, what are some of the potential outcomes of that work? And if you can connect to the quantitative, which we just talked about earlier, I mean, that's just, everyone should ask that. That is a fair question.
Well, you phrased it as investing in you, but it's through investing in you, they're also investing in themselves.
Yeah, it's a true partnership, and success is shared. And I always say, I had one school, we worked for a couple of years, and they moved from a C to an A rating. Mm-hmm. And I will say I played my small part. But how did that move really transpire? Because of the work of that team, the work of the teachers. And, I will never say it's because of what I did. And I think that's where a lot of consultancies and speakers get where they lose the clout. It's not, we don't do anything. We might set the stage, but the majority of the work is if we can move the masses, and that's really another key tenet of leadership. Can we move the masses where they are then able to revel in the fruits of their labor? And that's probably the most gratifying part of my job, is basking in the success of others.
So I like this idea of rapid feedback. So you said within 24 hours?
24 hours.
24 hours of your initial meeting, you were able to provide some sort of a feedback or a meeting, not necessarily initial. So how frequently, and I know this may vary across your different consultancies, but how frequent or spread out are your facilitations typically?
Well, first I want to make a comment on feedback. Everybody says they want feedback, but are the people asking for it open to it? And that's where questions are such a vital resource for leaders. If we ask the right questions, it can lead people to their own analysis of when they need to grow. That's when feedback sticks. So, for me, when I think about the reports, they'll be generated within, 24 hours, because research on feedback has shown it has to be timely. It has to be specific and practical. And I don't really like the receiver, but it has to be a facilitation. It has to be a dialogue instead of a monologue.
And can I add relevant?
Yes, relevant. And so, when I look at it, the frequency varies. It really comes down to, hey, these are the Title 2A funds we have in almost every district. I say, don't use your local funds. Use Title II, which is earmarked, Title 2A specifically.
Right.
So typically it's 3 at a minimum visits, but the schools where I've seen really move the needle, it's about 5.
So if you had 3, what would be the time between?
Yeah, so typically, I'll use a Northeastern calendar, because those schools start basically in September. So you might have, end of September, then, early, like mid-January, and then March.
Okay.
A lot of cycles are geared to happen before standardized testing, and standardized testing is not the end all be all, but a lot of my projects, I'm there to help improve achievement. And I'm able to show how the methodologies, how all the unique frameworks that I've created actually will help move the needle of that. But that then gets you, because once the spring gets in and afterwards, the focus is not, just naturally, it's just not there like it is in the beginning of the year.
So I'm painting a picture for myself and also for the listeners. So let's say you have 3 structured facilitations, and I'm using the word structured in a loose manner. But you mentioned that this one principal is sending you a texting you, which is very interesting, because you're providing personal support because they're texting you the results or just comments. And in some ways, they're just highlighting, saying, celebrating small wins. What happens in between those formal facilitations?
In between, I set up virtual office hours. So since I'm all over the world, we set up, say if I'm, I do a September and a January on-site visit, we'll then have office hours in October, November, and December. And I do that on my own time, because that's how I get to learn. Usually I'm in a hotel anyway, doing nothing. So, but yeah, I'll have those facilitations, and then I give all the principal, the leaders, my cell phone, because I want them to understand that I am there for them. They can bounce ideas off me. They can vent, because I've been in their position. But being able to visit thousands of classrooms a year with leaders,
right,
I have that context. So, we have those in between, because what I learned is it's so important to be able to kind of do those check-ins and make sure that, hey, what's the progress? How are you following your goals? What hurdles are you facing? But then they're able to speak with their colleagues as well. And it just turns in where I'm like kind of backing off. I'm actually in the shadows, and they're having this conversation, and they're just like, oh my goodness, having this time we don't usually have, it's just been so beneficial.
So feedback, regular touch points. What are you learning about managing the change process? Because I know I'm stepping back from your school where you were the principal, but now you're looking at different contexts and across different systems. What are the big lessons you're learning about how to manage the change process?
Yeah, a lot of it is, we all, whether it's a district, a school, or even just us as individuals, we tend to focus on things we cannot control.
Wow.
And when we focus on things we cannot control, we get aggravated. We think we can't do it. It's more work. It's too much. This too shall pass. And what I try to convey to every single system is, okay, focus on the things you can control. So from a teacher perspective, here's what teachers can control. They can control how they use the time in class with their students. Leaders can control whether or not they make the time to provide timely, practical, actionable feedback. And to do that, we have to make sure that we are shifting responsibilities from a management role and getting into classrooms. When I was a principal, we did everyone, myself, my team had to do 5 walks a day. We did 100 a week, 400 a month. We then presented that data, the results, during our faculty meetings. I made it a real exposition of learning and where we were, the glows, the grows. So I think if we get into classrooms more and we provide that feedback, we celebrate and validate what we're doing well, but then really focus on one or two things, and do those one or two things extremely well. What I see is a lot of fragmentation. You know, a lot of different things that might need more focus that are just not getting what it needs. So I think if we can really come back and look at consistency and continuity, nothing is new. Nothing is new. People know AI might be new, whatever research on the brain might be new, but the strategies, good teaching is good teaching. Effective leadership is effective leadership. Learning is learning. We spin our wheels trying to do all these things, and we think that it's new and more work. No. Consistency and continuity are the keys to change.
That's really insightful. But I want to, and I'm going to challenge you here. So for folks who are having a problem with feedback, particularly you said some people may not be open to feedback. And there are a number of reasons. Sometimes it's scary because we want to always have, we want to receive good information, or information that says we're doing excellent. Even though we know we may have some issues, we don't want that to necessarily be made public. So you talk about these walkthroughs and showing data. How do you help people to deal with news that may not be as gratifying or edifying as they would like, but then perhaps turn it into an edification?
Yeah, and that comes back to the questioning technique. So, you know, if I went to a classroom with you as a leader, you know, I'd say, well, hey, what did you like about that lesson? What was effective and what? Then I'd say, okay, well, where do you feel that teacher needs to grow? And how will you help that teacher? So then I'll listen, and then hopefully those first 2 questions will lead to what I've already scripted, what I already collected evidence on or lack thereof. But then I kind of drill down to, okay, well, how do you know those students learned? Where was the level of thinking? How did students apply their thinking in relevant and meaningful ways? Right. How could technology have been used in a purposeful way? What do you think the student, where would you rate the level of engagement? So if I can ask those right questions, and let's say right here, I could say, well, hey, Jacob, how do you think the podcast went? You know, what went well? Then I could say, hey, well, what do you feel did not go the way you wanted to? So then I'm listening. Then I'd say, okay, well, how do you know people are going to listen? How do you know there's going to be takeaways? So my goal, when, let's just say the podcast was a train wreck, which I hope it's not. If I ask the right questions, I should be able to lead you to what we come to consensus on. And that's the big piece, is a lot of times feedback is, you did this, you did that. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. Right. It's not feedback. That's criticism, or great job. Or, hey, you're not quite there yet in Danielson domain number 2.
Right.
But if the questions, and what I do is I have some basically standardized questions, but then I will tweak them based upon what I see to truly lead the person to their own realization. And in my opinion, that's the most effective way that we can facilitate.
Right. And it's taking the sting out of and reframing what some folks might perceive as negative, or you are now broadcasting a failure. One more question in this line, because you brought up the podcast, so I'm going to let you know. I personally am someone who can be hypercritical of any project that I do. So how do you help folks who are hypercritical, and you say how well that lesson went, and no matter how well you may think it would, they're going to nitpick on all the little things that, and they become overwhelmed or in some ways consumed by all the things that they think they did not do with.
Yeah, and that's just human nature. And I think we all succumb to that. So more to the point, but I think it's how we try to work to shift our own mindset, because, I think we're all susceptible to the fixed mindset. But how do we look at the growth mindset? So for me, it's always trying to flesh out the validation, the positives, and make sure that those outshine any opportunities to grow. And, I would look at, if we're going for you, if you're going to that, if you're being so critical, how do you look and say, hey, what can I do to get that self-validation? Because maybe validation is how many people download, how many people listen, how many people rate it. I think that's more extrinsic. The intrinsic piece is, how does it feel? Case in point. I'm always critical of my writing and stuff like that. But I got an email out of the blue today from an organization in Texas. And they're like, just read your latest blog post. I blog every other Sunday, and then I podcast every other Sunday.
Fellow podcaster.
So I'm just like, they're telling me why it was so meaningful. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Because I think sometimes, we don't get that validation.
Right.
But I think that maybe it is how we put that work out there to really get those things. So it's tough because I think we're all critical, but it's how do we really begin to tackle our own mindset? Because if we want others to have a growth mindset, how do we embody that ourselves?
So Eric, how can folks who might be interested in all this wonderful approach to aspire change, particularly through facilitated questioning, which it sounds like to me, how might folks connect with you?
Well, I'm not a hard person to get a hold of. I'm on every social media tool, you name it, I'm there. I really love Pinterest, by the way. I love curating all my content because I love images and things like that. Oh, yeah, Pinterest is great. But, escheninger@gmail.com, ericscheninger.com. One-stop shop. But like I said, you Google my name and you'll find something about me.
And so we're here at the conference, the National School Leaders Conference. What would you say to inspire educators in general, how to continue to move forward in elevating educational excellence and/or equity?
Well, questions are more important than answers. And I think like when you're in an event like this, or you read something or listen to something, how does it spark a question that piques your interest? And then how that question help you to find answers, construct new knowledge. So I think that's the key is, when I always say, when I do a session, I don't want you to do everything I say. I want you to leave with one or two ideas. Take those ideas, turn them into questions, and then think about how you're going to answer that question in a multifaceted way.
This reminds me of The Matrix. When Trinity tells Neo, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but she says, Neo, it's the question that guides you.
It is. I thought you were going to ask me if I'm going to take the red pill or the blue pill. But you're right. And it really is the question that guides. And I think, like, as leaders, you do not have all the answers, and you will not have all the answers. No one does. And if we focus on answers all the time, we are never going to be able to lead our people. But if we can generate the right questions That's half the battle.
So Eric Scheninger of Aspire Change EDU, thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where we seek to advance educational excellence and equity.
Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence podcast, and we would like to share an opportunity for educators to contribute to our XE listening tour. This week, take time to listen to a community member regarding their educational excellence and equity experience, because we believe that by listening, we unlock the engine for powerful educational transformation. Share your insights via voicemail at edupxe.com, and your comments may be shared on air with the podcast. That's the XE listening tour at edupxe.com. Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience Network of educational podcasts. This episode was recorded live at the National School Leaders Conference, powered by the National Association of Elementary School Principals. Join us in Denver, Colorado in 2027. Registration will open soon. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, YouTube, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.
We want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com, where you can leave an email or a voice message. That's edupxe.com.